The second I clicked send, a wave of regret washed over me. My stomach plummeted as the little check mark appeared next to the message, confirming that my wildly inappropriate text had just been delivered to the wrong number. And not just any wrong number, but one belonging to someone listed in my contacts as simply D. Russo, work emergency only. I'd been texting my best friend, Jenna, about a completely over-the-top fantasy I'd concocted about a mysterious stranger I'd spotted at the coffee shop that morning. The text was graphic, mortifying, and definitely not intended for anyone's eyes but hers. But, in my distracted state, mindlessly scrolling through my contacts while walking home from work, I'd hit the wrong name. Now those words, those shamefully detailed words, were sitting on some stranger's phone. My hands shook as I stared at my screen, silently begging the universe to somehow retract the message. I'd gotten this number 3 months ago when I'd witnessed a car accident downtown, and a sharply dressed man in an expensive suit had asked me to contact him if the police needed a witness statement. I'd never used it, never even thought about it, until this disastrous moment. 10 minutes ticked by. No response. Maybe he hadn't seen it. Maybe he'd deleted it without reading. Maybe I could just pretend this whole thing never happened and move on with my life. Then my phone buzzed. My heart leaped into my throat as I looked at the screen. The message was short, just 4 words that sent a shiver down my spine. Is this a joke? I typed frantically, my fingers clumsy and barely able to hit the right keys. I'm so sorry. Wrong number. Please delete that message. I'm mortified. The 3 dots appeared immediately, letting me know he was typing. They disappeared, then reappeared again. This back and forth went on for what felt like forever before his response finally came through. Who is this? Sarah Mitchell. I typed back. We met 3 months ago at an accident on 5th Avenue. You gave me your number in case the police needed my statement. I'm so incredibly sorry about that message. It was meant for my friend. The dots appeared again, then vanished. No response. I spent the next hour pacing my tiny apartment, checking my phone every 30 seconds, my anxiety growing with each passing minute of silence. Part of me desperately hoped he'd just let it go, forget the whole thing. But something about the way he'd responded, the careful consideration in his messages, suggested this wasn't over. That's when I heard them. Engines, multiple engines, powerful and deep, rumbling to a stop outside my building. I lived on the 2nd floor of a converted brownstone in a quiet neighborhood, where the most exciting thing that usually happened was Mrs. Chen's cat getting stuck in a tree. I moved to my window and peered down at the street below. 5 black SUVs, sleek and imposing, were parked in a perfect line along the curb. They had tinted windows so dark I couldn't see inside, and they looked like something out of a movie. The kind of movie where people didn't ask questions if they wanted to stay healthy. My hands started shaking again. This couldn't be related to my text. That would be insane. Who sends 5 SUVs to confront someone over a misdirected message? But as I watched, the driver's door of the middle SUV opened, and a man stepped out. Even from 2 floors up, I could tell he was imposing. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. He looked up at my building with an expression I couldn't quite decipher, then reached into his jacket. I stumbled backward from the window, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. This was really happening. Someone was here at my home because of that stupid text. My phone buzzed again. With trembling hands, I looked at the screen. Come downstairs, Miss Mitchell. We need to talk. I stared at the message, my mind racing through possibilities. None of them good. I could call the police, but what would I say? That I'd sent a dirty text to the wrong number. And now mysterious men in SUVs were outside my apartment? That sounded ridiculous, even in my own head. But the alternative, going down there, facing whoever this D. Russo was, terrified me even more. Another buzz. I'm not a patient man, Sarah. 5 minutes. The use of my first name sent a chill down my spine. There was something about the familiarity in it, the quiet authority, that made it clear this wasn't a request. It was a command. I grabbed my jacket with shaking hands, checked my reflection in the mirror by the door. My brown hair was a mess, my green eyes wide with fear, my face pale. I decided it didn't matter what I looked like. This wasn't a social call. The walk down the stairs felt like a march to my execution. Each step echoed in the narrow stairwell, and I found myself counting them, trying to focus on anything but what waited for me outside. When I pushed open the front door, the evening air hit me like a slap. It was October, crisp and cool, and the street was bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. Under different circumstances, it might have been beautiful. The man from the middle SUV stood on the sidewalk, his hands clasped in front of him, watching me with dark eyes that seemed to take in everything about me in a single glance. Up close, he was even more intimidating. His face was all sharp angles and hard lines, with a strong jaw covered in dark stubble and a nose that looked like it had been broken at least once. But it was his eyes that caught me, deep brown and intelligent, holding secrets that probably shouldn't be spoken aloud. "Miss Mitchell," he said, his voice deep and smooth with just a hint of an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe. "I'm Dominic Russo." I swallowed hard, trying to find my voice. "Mr. Russo, I really can't apologize enough about that text. It was a complete accident. And He held up a hand, silencing me. "Get in the car." "What? No, I'm not getting in any car." "Look," I said. "I was sorry. Can't we just forget this ever happened?" Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe, or perhaps frustration. It was hard to tell. "This isn't about the text, Miss Mitchell." "Well, not entirely. You've created a situation that requires my attention, and I prefer to handle delicate matters privately. Now, you can get in the car voluntarily, or I can have my men assist you. Your choice." I looked around desperately. The street was empty. No witnesses, no one to help if this went sideways. But something in his tone, despite the threat, wasn't overtly hostile. It was businesslike, almost professional. "If I get in that car, where are we going?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Somewhere we can talk without your neighbors recording this conversation for social media," he replied, nodding toward a window across the street where I could see a curtain moving. "Mrs. Patterson, of course," he added, referencing the neighborhood gossip. He had a point. This scene probably already had the whole block buzzing. "Fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm texting my friend your license plate number and telling her if I don't check in within an hour, she calls the police." The corner of his mouth twitched. Was that almost a smile? "Smart girl. Please do that. I'd expect nothing less." One of his men, another imposing figure in a dark suit, opened the rear door of the middle SUV. The interior was immaculate, all black leather and dark wood trim, with a privacy screen between the front and back seats. I climbed in, my legs feeling like jelly, and Dominic slid in beside me. The door closed with a heavy thunk that sounded entirely too final. As the convoy pulled away from my building, I quickly typed out a message to Jenna with shaking fingers, including the license plate number I'd glimpsed and a brief explanation of what was happening. Her response was immediate. "Sarah, what the hell? I'm tracking your phone. If you don't text me in 45 minutes, I'm calling every cop in the city." I showed Dominic the exchange. He nodded approvingly. Good friends are valuable. We rode in silence for several minutes. I snuck glances at him from the corner of my eye, trying to understand who this man was. Everything about him screamed power and danger, from the expensive watch on his wrist to the way his men moved with military precision. But there was something else, too. Something I couldn't quite identify. A weariness, maybe, or a carefully controlled tension. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. "My restaurant," he replied. "Best Italian food in the city. Have you eaten dinner?" I blinked. "You're taking me to dinner?" "I'm taking you somewhere private where we can discuss your situation. The fact that they serve excellent food is merely a bonus." He turned to look at me fully for the first time since we'd gotten in the car. "You're not in danger, Miss Mitchell. At least not from me. But you need to understand something about the text you sent." My stomach churned. "What about it?" "That number you have, the one I gave you at the accident. It's not my personal cell. It's a business line. a line that several of my associates monitor for security purposes. Oh God. How many people saw that text? 4, he said calmly. My head of security, 2 of his team members, and myself. I wanted to sink through the leather seat and disappear into the floor of the car. I'm going to die of embarrassment. There are worse ways to die, he said, and there was definitely amusement in his voice now. But the issue isn't the embarrassment. The issue is that now 4 people in my organization know that a civilian has my direct emergency line, and they've seen you send something that could be interpreted as either a very bold advance or a very stupid attempt at some kind of honeypot operation. A what? I asked, genuinely confused. An attempt to compromise me, to get close to me for ulterior motives. He said it matter-of-factly, as if this was a normal concern people had. Why would anyone think that? It was clearly a mistake. He looked at me with an expression that was almost pitying. Miss Mitchell, you seem like a smart woman, so I'm going to be direct with you. Do you know who I am? What I do? I shook my head slowly. You're some kind of businessman, I assume. You gave me your card that said Russo Enterprises. And you never looked me up? Never got curious about the man whose emergency number you saved in your phone? No, I admitted. I just filed it away and forgot about it. Why? Dominic Russo studied my face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether I was telling the truth. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because he leaned back against the leather seat and let out a long breath. I'm the head of the Russo family, he said simply. I waited for more information, but he seemed to think that explained everything. Okay, I said when the silence stretched too long. Is that supposed to mean something to me? Now he definitely looked amused. You really don't know. Know what? The Russo family controls most of the business interests in the eastern district of the city. Import, export, real estate, restaurants, construction. We have our fingers in many pies, as the saying goes. Understanding began to dawn slowly, like a nightmare coming into focus. You're in the mob. Mob is such a crude word, he said with a slight smile. I prefer to think of it as a family business with deep traditional roots. I pressed myself against the car door, as far from him as I could get in the confined space. Oh my God! I sent a dirty text to a Mafia boss. This is how I die. This is actually how my life ends. Calm down, he said, his voice firm but not unkind. If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. I certainly wouldn't waste good cannoli on you first. That's not reassuring. It should be. It means I believe you're telling the truth about the text being a mistake. But here's the problem. My world operates on perception and reputation. If word got out that some random woman has my emergency line and feels comfortable enough to send me explicit messages, people might think you're my mistress or an informant or any number of things that would make you a target. The weight of his words settled over me like a heavy blanket. A target for who? My enemies, my rivals. People who would love nothing more than to find a weakness they could exploit. He reached into his jacket. I flinched. He pulled out a phone. I need to control this narrative before it controls us. What does that mean? He tapped something on his screen, then looked back at me. It means for the next few weeks you're going to be seen with me in public. We're going to create the impression that yes, we're involved, but in a way that makes you unreachable and untouchable. The girlfriend of Dominic Russo is off-limits to everyone. It's the safest category I can put you in. I laughed. A high-pitched, slightly hysterical sound. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? Are you insane? I want you to stay alive, he corrected. Look, I know this isn't what you signed up for when you witnessed that accident, but you've been pulled into my world now, however accidentally, and I take responsibility for the people who get caught in the crossfire. This is me protecting you by forcing me to date you, by making sure no one else thinks they can touch you to get to me. There's a difference. The car slowed, and I realized we'd pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a building. I recognized Russo's, one of the most exclusive Italian restaurants in the city. I'd walked past it 100 times, but never been inside. The waiting list was supposedly months long. I don't understand why you'd even care, I said quietly. You don't know me. I'm nobody. Something softened in his expression, just for a moment. You're somebody who had the courage to come downstairs when I told you to, even though you were terrified. You're somebody who made sure your friend could track you, who didn't just panic and make things worse. That tells me you're smart and brave, and those are qualities I respect. I don't leave smart, brave people to fend for themselves when I'm the reason they're in danger. The car stopped, and his door was opened by one of his men. Dominic stepped out, then turned and offered me his hand. Come on, let's get some food, and I'll explain exactly how this is going to work. I looked at his hand, strong and steady, completely at odds with the chaos he just described. Everything in me screamed to refuse, to demand he take me home, to run as far from this insanity as I could get. But he was right about one thing. I was already in this. The moment that text sent, my nice, normal, boring life had ended. And looking into those dark eyes, I saw something I hadn't expected. Not cruelty or menace, but a strange kind of honor. Whatever Dominic Russo was, whatever he'd done, he genuinely believed he was protecting me. I took his hand. The restaurant was closed to the public, but inside it was alive with quiet activity. Staff moved efficiently through the dining room, and the smell of garlic, tomatoes, and fresh bread made my stomach rumble despite my anxiety. Dominic led me to a private room in the back, a small space with exposed brick walls, soft lighting, and a single table set for two. Sit, he said, pulling out a chair for me. I'll have Antonio bring us something to eat. I don't know if I can eat right now, I admitted. My stomach is in knots. Try anyway. We have a lot to discuss and you'll think better on a full stomach. A man I assumed was Antonio appeared minutes later with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses, followed by a parade of dishes. Bruschetta glistening with olive oil, fresh mozzarella and tomatoes, pasta in a sauce that smelled divine, and delicate veal that practically melted on the plate. Dominic poured the wine and slid a glass toward me. Drink. It'll help with the nerves. I took a sip and, despite everything, had to admit it was incredible, smooth and rich, probably worth more than my monthly grocery budget. So, explain this plan to me, I said, setting down the glass. What exactly would pretending to be your girlfriend entail? He cut into his veal with precision. A few public appearances, dinner at places where we'll be seen, maybe a charity gala next week that I have to attend, social media posts that suggest we're together. Nothing too demanding. And how long would this go on? A month, maybe 2. Long enough to establish the relationship. Then we'll stage a quiet, amicable breakup. You'll go back to your life, and my people will keep an eye on you to make sure there's no blowback. Your people will keep an eye on me, I repeated. You mean surveillance. Protection, he corrected. There's a difference. Look, Sarah. May I call you Sarah? I nodded, too overwhelmed to object. Sarah, I know this sounds extreme. I know you're scared, but I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've seen what happens to people who get caught in the wrong place at the wrong time without protection. I won't let that happen to you because of a simple mistake. Why? I asked suddenly. Why do you care? Most people in your position would probably just make me disappear, right? Eliminate the problem. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I saw something dark flash across his face. My father would have done exactly that. He believed in eliminating all threats, no matter how small or innocent. I am not my father. There was a story there I could tell. Pain and history and choices that had carved him into the man sitting across from me. I got into this life because I was born into it, he continued. I didn't choose my family or my legacy, but I did choose how I'd run things once I took over. I don't hurt civilians. I don't involve innocents, and I don't punish people for accidents that aren't their fault. I picked at the bruschetta, my mind racing. What if I say no? What if I refuse to go along with this? Then I'll still protect you, but it'll be harder. You'll need a security detail that follows you everywhere, which will disrupt your entire life. You'll have to move to a safe house temporarily. You'll be looking over your shoulder constantly. This way, he said. My way, you get to keep living your life with minimal disruption. And everyone in my world understands that you're under my protection. It's cleaner. Cleaner? I repeated with a bitter laugh. Nothing about this is clean. No, he agreed. But it's the best solution to a messy problem. I took another sip of wine, then a bite of the pasta. My God, it was amazing. Even in the middle of a crisis, I could appreciate good food. If I agree to this, I said slowly, what are the rules? What do I have to do? He leaned back in his chair, seeming to relax slightly now that I was negotiating instead of panicking. You show up when I need you to. You act affectionate but not inappropriate in public. You don't talk to the press about me or our relationship. You don't dig into my business or ask questions about things that don't concern you. And most importantly, you don't tell anyone the truth about our arrangement. Not your best friend, not your family, no one. I have to lie to Jenna. That hurt more than I expected. Jenna and I had been friends since college. We told each other everything. You have to protect her by not involving her, Dominic said firmly. The more she knows, the more danger she's in. Tell her we met, we're dating, you're happy. Keep it simple and vague. That's all she needs to know. I thought about Jenna, about how she'd react to me suddenly dating a mysterious, wealthy, older man. She'd be suspicious, but she'd also be thrilled that I was finally putting myself out there after my disaster of a last relationship. What do I get out of this? I asked. Besides not being murdered, He smiled and it transformed his face. Suddenly, he looked younger, less intimidating, almost handsome in a dangerous kind of way. Besides staying alive, I'll pay you for your time. Consider it compensation for the inconvenience. $50,000. I nearly choked on my wine. What? $50,000. Deposited in your account in installments over the next 2 months. Enough to make the disruption to your life worthwhile. That kind of money would change everything for me. I could pay off my student loans, build up my savings, maybe even quit my terrible job at the insurance company and look for something better. And after the 2 months, what happens then? We end it publicly but remain on good terms. If anyone ever asks, you tell them I was a gentleman. We wanted different things and we're better as friends. Simple. Clean. You keep using that word, I muttered. Because, despite what you might think, I prefer simple and clean. It's the rest of the world that insists on making things complicated. I looked at him across the table, this stranger who'd crashed into my life with his SUVs and his protection and his impossible offer. Everything about this was insane. I should run. I should refuse. I should call the police and let them handle whatever danger he thought I was in. But looking into those dark eyes, I saw something I recognized because I felt it, too. Loneliness. Whatever Dominic Russo was, however many people surrounded him with their suits and their guns and their loyalty, he was alone in the ways that mattered. And maybe, just maybe, he really was trying to do the right thing in a world where right and wrong were painted in shades of gray. Okay, I heard myself say, I'll do it, but I have conditions. His eyebrow raised. You're negotiating with me? You said I was smart and brave. Smart people negotiate. Brave people don't just roll over and accept whatever they're offered. That smile again. The one that made him look almost human. Fair enough. What are your conditions? Okay. Here's the translation and rewritten version in US English. Aiming for a write and expand deeply style. First, I need complete transparency about where we're going and what's expected of me at any public event. No surprises, period. Second, your security guys can keep an eye on my building, but they aren't coming with me into my office or my apartment unless there's a legitimate, verified threat. I need some personal space, plain and simple. Third, let's lay down some ground rules right now regarding physical contact. I'm fine with holding hands, doing the couple thing for the cameras, but I need to know exactly what you're expecting beyond that. Anything else? He repeated, a hint of amusement flickering in his eyes. I felt my face flush. You know what I mean. Kissing or more. A kiss or two might be necessary for appearances, to sell the whole relationship thing, he said, choosing his words carefully. But I am absolutely not going to pressure you into doing anything that makes you uncomfortable. We can stage it, choreograph it. I'll make sure you see it coming. And as for anything more intimate than that, I don't sleep with women who are doing me a favor. That's a line I simply won't cross. I nodded. A wave of relief washing over me. Okay, good. And fourth, if at any point I feel like this whole thing is too much or that I'm in genuine danger, I get to walk away, and you still provide protection. I won't be trapped in this situation just because I agreed to it initially. He thought about this for a long moment, slowly swirling the wine in his glass. Agreed. But I need something from you, too. What is it? If you see or hear anything in my world that worries you, anything that seems off or wrong, you come to me first. You don't go running to the police. You don't try to play hero and handle it on your own. You don't just disappear. You come directly to me, and we deal with it together. Because the moment you involve outside authorities, everything becomes exponentially more dangerous for both of us. That was a significant ask. It meant putting my complete trust in him. Truly trusting him, not only with my safety but also potentially with my own sense of right and wrong. But I'd already stepped over that line the second I got into his car. Okay, I said, sealing the deal. We shook hands across the table, his grip firm and surprisingly warm. The instant our hands connected, I felt a jolt, a spark of something between us. An undeniable electricity that I immediately tried to dismiss. This was strictly a business arrangement, nothing more. So when does this all start? I asked, quickly pulling my hand back. Tomorrow night. There's a new gallery opening in Chelsea. Very exclusive. Lots of press coverage. It's the perfect venue to debut our relationship. Wear something elegant. I'll pick you up at 7 o'clock. Tomorrow? That's awfully soon. There's no point in dragging our feet. The sooner we establish this charade, the safer you'll be. He pulled out his phone and started typing rapidly. I'm sending you the contact information for my assistant, Maria. She'll help you with anything you need. Dress shopping, hair appointments, whatever. All expenses paid, of course. My phone buzzed with the incoming message. This was actually happening. Less than 2 hours ago, I'd been walking home from work, trying to figure out what to make for dinner. And now I was agreeing to fake date a real-life mafia boss. I should probably get home, I said, feeling suddenly and completely exhausted. Jenna is going to be freaking out. Of course. Dominic stood and offered his hand again. I'll take you back. The ride back to my apartment was noticeably quieter than the ride to the restaurant. I spent most of it staring blankly out the window, trying to wrap my head around everything that had just transpired. Dominic, on the other hand, spent the entire ride on his phone, rapidly typing messages and occasionally speaking in hushed tones to someone on the other end of the line. When we pulled up in front of my building, he walked me all the way to my door. It felt strangely chivalrous, this dangerous man making sure I got home safe and sound. Sarah, he said as I reached for the door handle. Thank you. I know this isn't exactly what you signed up for, but I promise I'll make this as easy on you as humanly possible. Why do I get the feeling easy isn't exactly a word that exists in your world? I asked, a hint of sarcasm in my voice. Because you're remarkably perceptive. He handed me a card that was different from the business card he'd given me months ago. This one only had a phone number printed on it. This is my personal cell. You can call or text anytime, day or night, for any reason whatsoever. If you're scared, if you need anything at all, or if you just want to know what you're walking into tomorrow. I meant what I said about transparency. I took the card, our fingers brushing lightly against each other once again. That spark was still there, undeniably present. Good night, Dominic. Good night, Sarah. Sweet dreams. I laughed despite myself. Somehow, I seriously doubt that's even remotely possible after today. His smile was the last thing I saw before I closed the door behind me and trudged up the stairs to my apartment. Once inside, I practically collapsed onto my couch and immediately dialed Jenna's number. She answered on the first ring. Oh my God, Sarah. I've been absolutely losing my mind. Are you okay? What happened? Who is that guy? I'm fine, I said. And surprisingly, I actually meant it. And it's complicated. Can you come over? I need to tell you everything, and I definitely need wine. Lots and lots of wine. I'm already on my way. I barely slept a wink that night. After Jenna finally left, completely shocked, incredibly suspicious, but ultimately convinced that I was safe and making my own choices, I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, my mind constantly replaying every single moment of the evening. The black SUVs, the fancy restaurant, the agreement we'd made, the way Dominic's hand had felt in mine. The card with his personal number sat on my nightstand, illuminated by the soft glow of my phone screen. Several times I reached out to grab it, wanting desperately to text him, to ask him the dozen or so questions that had occurred to me since he dropped me off at my door. But each and every time, I pulled my hand back. This was simply a business arrangement, nothing more. By the time the sun finally rose, I'd somehow managed to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be so bad. 2 months of playing dress-up and attending fancy events with an admittedly attractive man. $50,000 deposited into my bank account, and then back to my normal life. I could definitely do this. My phone rang promptly at 8 a.m. An unknown number popped up on the screen. I answered cautiously. "Miss Mitchell, this is Maria Santos, Mr. Russo's assistant." The voice was warm and professional, with just a hint of a Spanish accent. "Mr. Russo asked me to call you regarding this evening's event." "Right," I said, immediately sitting up in bed and trying to sound more awake than I actually felt. "The gallery opening." "Exactly. I've taken the liberty of making an appointment for you at Bissima, a high-end boutique in Midtown. They're expecting you at 11 o'clock. Mr. Russo has an account there, so everything will be taken care of. They'll assist you in selecting an appropriate dress and accessories." "That's really not necessary," I protested. "I already have dresses." "With all due respect, Miss Mitchell, this is a very exclusive event. The press will be there, and your appearance with Mr. Russo will be photographed and meticulously analyzed. It's imperative that you look the part. Consider it part of your compensation." She had a very valid point. My closet consisted primarily of work-appropriate blazers and casual weekend wear. Absolutely nothing that would even remotely pass muster at the kind of event she was describing. "Okay," I agreed reluctantly. 11 o'clock at Bissima. I'll be there. Excellent. I'm also sending over some background information about tonight, the gallery itself, the artist, and the other guests who will be attending. Mr. Russo thought you'd appreciate being prepared." "Thank you. That's actually very thoughtful of him." "Mr. Russo is always thoughtful about details, Miss Mitchell. It's one of the primary reasons he's so successful. I'll see you tonight." She hung up before I had a chance to ask her what she meant by, "see you tonight." But the answer became crystal clear the moment my email pinged seconds later with a message from Maria containing a remarkably detailed dossier about the evening's event. The gallery was showcasing a relatively new artist, someone with Italian heritage who'd recently made some serious waves in the European art scene. The guest list included several names I instantly recognized. Local politicians, prominent business leaders, well-known society figures, and accompanying each name were little handwritten notes in Maria's precise script. Allied with Russo interests, neutral party, potential rival, be cautious. I was essentially being given a roadmap to navigate Dominic's complex world. Despite myself, I was genuinely impressed. The boutique appointment went far better than I had initially anticipated. The staff at Bissima treated me like royalty the instant I mentioned Dominic's name. And the personal shopper, a tiny woman named Gabriella with an impeccable eye for style, selected 3 dresses for me to try on. "This one," she said, holding up a breathtaking, deep emerald green dress with a fitted bodice and a gracefully flowing skirt, "will make your eyes absolutely stunning. And the color is sophisticated, but not overly bold. It's perfect for a first public appearance." When I actually tried it on, I had to grudgingly admit that she was absolutely right. The dress fit me perfectly, hugging my curves in all the right places while still managing to be incredibly elegant and appropriate. With the right pair of heels and some simple, understated jewelry, I'd actually look like I belonged at Dominic's side. "Mr. Russo has excellent taste," Gabriella said as she arranged for the dress to be slightly altered and delivered to my apartment that afternoon. "He sent me a description of you that was remarkably accurate." "He did?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "He said you'd be beautiful but wouldn't believe it and that I should help you see yourself the way he sees you." She smiled warmly. He was absolutely right about the beautiful part. I left the boutique feeling strangely unsettled. This was supposed to be a straightforward business arrangement, a completely fake relationship for the sake of safety and convenience. But the level of care Dominic was putting into the smallest details, the way he had described me to Gabriella, the personal phone number, the transparency he'd promised, it all felt far more personal than it really should have. Back at home, I spent the afternoon researching Dominic Russo far more thoroughly than I probably should have. The internet was absolutely overflowing with information, although most of it was vague and speculative at best. He was 35 years old, had taken over the family business from his father a decade ago, and was known for being both ruthless and surprisingly fair. There were countless photos of him at various events, always impeccably dressed, often with a beautiful woman on his arm, although none of those relationships seemed to last for more than a few months. I even managed to find one interview with a local business magazine where he talked about modernizing traditional industries and the paramount importance of loyalty. My father believed in fear, he'd said. I believe in respect. Fear simply makes people compliant. Respect makes them truly committed. There's a significant difference. The same essential distinction he'd drawn with me regarding surveillance versus protection, and the difference between a mob and a family business. Dominic Russo seemed to spend a considerable amount of time drawing lines, defining differences, and creating subtle nuances in a world that probably didn't even appreciate them. At precisely 7 p.m. a knock echoed at my door. I gave myself one last, critical look in the mirror. The dress was absolutely perfect. My hair was styled in soft, elegant waves, and I'd managed to apply makeup that made me look polished and put together without feeling like I was wearing a costume. Then I opened the door. Dominic stood there, looking absolutely devastating in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, and I actually felt my breath catch in my throat. He looked incredibly powerful, all sharp lines and controlled energy, but there was also something in his eyes when he saw me that made my stomach do a complete flip-flop. You look beautiful, he said simply. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself. He smiled, and then offered me his arm. Ready? As ready as I'll ever be. The gallery opening was everything Maria's notes had promised, and then some. The space itself was sleek and modern, filled to the brim with people who literally dripped wealth and influence. Waiters circulated throughout the room, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres, and the artwork displayed on the walls was undeniably striking, bold, colorful pieces that seemed to pulsate with a vibrant energy. The instant we walked into the gallery, I felt every single pair of eyes in the room turn directly towards us. Conversations abruptly paused. People definitely noticed. Dominic kept his hand gently on the small of my back, a possessive but somehow grounding touch as we moved through the crowded room. He introduced me to person after person, and I tried my best to remember all the names and faces, to smile at the appropriate moments, and to laugh politely at all the jokes. And who is this lovely creature? A woman in her late 50s, practically dripping in diamonds, looked me up and down with barely concealed curiosity. Sarah Mitchell, Dominic said smoothly before I could even answer. Sarah, this is Constance Bellamy. She's on the board of several charities that I support. Charmed, Constance said, although her tone strongly suggested otherwise. How did you two meet? Sarah helped me out of a rather difficult situation a few months ago. Dominic said smoothly. I've been trying to properly thank her ever since. She's been remarkably resistant to my charms. The lie flowed so effortlessly from his lips, artfully peppered with just enough truth to be completely believable. The accident, the help I'd provided, it was all there, just cleverly reframed. Well, you certainly seem to have won her over eventually, Constance said with a knowing smile. How lovely. As she drifted away, I whispered to Dominic. You're really good at this. Years of practice, he murmured back with a wry smile. You're doing quite well, too. Just stay close to me, and I'll handle all the difficult ones. We spent the next hour or so circulating through the gallery. Dominic was incredibly attentive without being overbearing. Always aware of where I was at all times, always ready to smoothly guide me through any conversations that started to feel even slightly uncomfortable. Several times, I caught him watching me with an expression that I couldn't quite decipher. Something somewhere between amusement and appreciation, and something else entirely that I really didn't want to try to name. Let's go take a look at the art, he suggested eventually, gently steering me away from a particularly aggressive businessman who'd been trying to corner Dominic and talk about investments. We stopped in front of a particularly large painting, an abstract piece rendered in vibrant reds and golds that seemed to subtly shift and change depending on the angle from which you viewed it. Do you even like art? I asked him. I appreciate beauty, he said, but he was looking directly at me, not at the painting. Dominic, I said quietly, very aware of the people surrounding us. What exactly are you doing? Selling the relationship, he replied just as quietly. People need to actually believe that I'm completely captivated by you. I'm simply giving them what they expect to see. Right? Of course, business. Something briefly flickered across his face. Yes, business. A photographer approached us, politely asking for permission to take our picture for the gallery's social media accounts. Dominic pulled me closer to him, placing his arm possessively around my waist, and I leaned into him slightly, trying my best to look natural and relaxed. The camera flashed several times in quick succession. Beautiful couple, the photographer said enthusiastically. You two definitely have great chemistry. We certainly do, Dominic agreed smoothly, and I felt his hand tighten almost imperceptibly on my waist. As the photographer moved away, a sudden commotion near the entrance instantly drew everyone's attention. A man had just entered the gallery, flanked by his own impressive security detail, and the entire energy in the room immediately shifted. People instinctively moved back, creating a wider space, and I felt Dominic tense up slightly beside me. Who is that? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Antonio Martinelli, Dominic replied, his voice carefully neutral. A rival family. Antonio Martinelli was noticeably older than Dominic, probably somewhere in his mid-40s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of face that had probably been quite handsome once, but was now hardened and weathered by whatever life he'd lived. His eyes slowly swept across the room, finally landing on us, and his mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. He walked directly toward us with deliberate slowness, his security detail keeping a careful distance, and I felt Dominic's entire body subtly shift into a different mode. He didn't seem afraid, but he was definitely alert, in a way that instantly made my heart rate spike. Russo, Martinelli said when he finally reached us. I honestly didn't expect to see you here. I actually thought art wasn't really your thing. I'm full of surprises, Antonio, Dominic replied evenly. And I could definitely say the same about you. Since when do you support emerging Italian artists? Since I heard you were the primary donor for this exhibition, I thought I'd come see what exactly had caught your interest. His eyes slid to me. Or perhaps I should really say who has caught your interest. Sarah Mitchell, I said smoothly, offering him my hand before Dominic could even intervene. And you are? Antonio Martinelli, he said, taking my hand and pressing it lightly to his lips in a gesture that felt far more threatening than charming. A business associate of Dominic's. Competitor would be a much more accurate description, Dominic said with a distinct edge to his voice. Semantics. Martinelli released my hand, but continued to study me intently. You know, Russo, I really have to admire your taste. She's absolutely lovely, and much more genuine than the usual society girls you escort to these things. Sarah is special, Dominic said, and there was a clear warning in his tone that even I could hear and understand. I'm sure she is. Tell me, Miss Mitchell, what exactly do you do? How did you find yourself in Dominic's orbit? I suddenly felt like I was being carefully tested, thoroughly examined for any weaknesses. I work in insurance risk assessment, actually, and I actually met Dominic through perfectly ordinary circumstances. Risk assessment, Martinelli repeated slowly. How very appropriate. Are you also assessing the potential risks of being with our Dominic here, Antonio? Dominic said, his voice dropping to a dangerous level. You've said hello. Now move along. Of course. I certainly wouldn't want to impose. But Martinelli didn't move. Instead, he leaned in slightly closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You really should know, Miss Mitchell, that Dominic's world is far more dangerous than it appears to be on the surface. Beautiful art galleries, fine wine, and elegant dresses. It's all just window dressing. You need to make absolutely sure you know what you're really getting yourself into. I certainly appreciate your concern, I said, managing to keep my voice steady despite the fear that was now crawling steadily up my spine. But I'm perfectly capable of making my own choices. Bold, Martinelli said with what might have actually been genuine approval. She's definitely got spirit, Russo. Do try your absolute best not to get her killed. He turned and walked away, his security detail following closely behind. And the instant he was finally out of earshot, I felt Dominic's hand gently but firmly on my elbow. We're leaving, he said quietly. But the event now, Sarah, the tone of his voice left absolutely no room for argument. We made quick goodbyes to the gallery owner and the artist, Dominic offering some carefully crafted apologies about an early morning meeting. And then we were outside, the cool October air hitting my face like a much-needed wake-up call. The black SUVs were waiting, engines already running. Dominic helped me into the car, and the moment the door was securely closed behind us, the entire convoy pulled smoothly away from the curb with impressive military precision. I'm truly sorry, Dominic said immediately. I honestly didn't think he'd actually show up here. He's usually far more subtle in his provocations. What exactly did he mean about getting me killed? I asked, my voice now shaking noticeably as the adrenaline slowly began to fade. He was simply trying to scare you, to drive a wedge between the two of us. Dominic ran a frustrated hand through his hair, slightly disturbing its perfect style. Martinelli and I have been engaged in a Cold War for years now. He basically controls the entire waterfront. I control the Eastern District. We've always managed to avoid an open conflict, but he's constantly looking for any kind of leverage. And you're leverage now. You're now under my protection, which basically means that touching you would instantly start a war that neither of us can actually afford. But yes, he definitely knows that your existence makes me far more vulnerable than I've ever been before. He turned to look at me fully. I'm going to have to increase your security detail. Starting tomorrow, you'll have a shadow detail. 2 of my people who will keep a safe distance, but will always be close enough to intervene immediately if needed. Dominic, I simply can't live like that. You can, and you will, at least until I'm absolutely certain that Martinelli isn't going to try something stupid. His voice was firm, brooking absolutely no argument. This is precisely why I wanted to establish you as my girlfriend publicly. It immediately makes the potential cost of targeting you far too high. But he's definitely testing boundaries now, carefully seeing just what he can get away with. I closed my eyes tightly, trying to somehow process everything. This was all supposed to be so simple. A few events, some posed photos, and then right back to normal. I know, his voice softened slightly. I completely understand that this isn't exactly what you signed up for. If you honestly want out, if all of this is simply too much, just tell me right now, and I'll find another way to protect you. I thought about it for a moment. I could easily walk away, go into hiding somewhere, and let Dominic's people guard me from a safe distance, but something deep down inside me strongly rebelled at the very idea of running, of allowing this Martinelli person to simply scare me off. No, I said finally. I said that I'd do this, and I will, but I also need you to be completely honest with me about the potential risks. No more surprises. Agreed. He looked genuinely relieved. Thank you, Sarah. I know I keep saying this, but you're far braver than you actually give yourself credit for. Or maybe stupider. The jury is still out on that one. He laughed, a genuine sound that actually transformed his face again. Brave. Definitely brave. The following 2 weeks quickly fell into a strange, almost surreal kind of rhythm. Dominic picked me up for dinner 3 times, each time at a different high-end restaurant where we were inevitably photographed by the paparazzi. We attended a high-profile charity auction together, where he bid an absolutely obscene amount of money on a weekend getaway package, and then promptly announced that he was donating it right back to the charity to be auctioned off all over again. We went to the theater, to a museum opening, and even to a private concert at a venue that I didn't even know existed. And throughout it all, I suddenly found myself noticing little things about him that I really hadn't expected to notice. The way he genuinely listened whenever I talked, really listened, his attention never wavering, even when important people were trying to interrupt. The way he always held doors open for me and politely pulled out my chair with an old-fashioned courtesy that really should have felt completely outdated, but somehow didn't. The way he actually laughed at my jokes, even the incredibly bad ones. And the way his eyes always crinkled ever so slightly at the corners whenever he smiled. The way he touched me, always respectful, always completely appropriate for a public setting, but still lingering just a moment longer than was strictly necessary. his hand lightly on my back, his fingers softly brushing against mine. The time he gently tucked a stray strand of hair back behind my ear and had let his hand rest against my cheek for just a quick heartbeat. It was quickly becoming harder and harder to remember that all of this was completely fake. My shadow detail, two men named Marco and David, were surprisingly unobtrusive. I barely even noticed them on most days, although I always knew that they were constantly there, always watching, and always keeping me safe. It really should have felt oppressive and stifling, but instead, it felt oddly comforting. Jenna finally met Dominic at a dinner that I had arranged, and afterward, she quickly pulled me aside with wide, incredulous eyes. "Sarah, that man is completely gone for you. Like totally and completely smitten. The way he looks at you, I've honestly never seen anything quite like it. It's all just an act," I protested weakly. "If that's acting, then someone seriously needs to give him an Oscar. And honey, you're really not doing much better at pretending that this is all completely casual. You positively light up whenever he walks into a room." I vehemently denied it, but her words still stuck with me. Was I really starting to develop actual feelings for Dominic? Was this some weird kind of Stockholm syndrome or something equally irrational? Or was it at least remotely possible that underneath all of the danger, the complex business arrangement, and the complicated world he lived in, there was a real connection actually forming between us? The question just became harder and harder to ignore, especially about 3 weeks into our fake relationship, when everything suddenly changed. It was a seemingly ordinary Tuesday evening, and Dominic had picked me up for dinner at a quiet, unassuming Italian restaurant. Not one that he actually owned, but a family-owned place that he claimed made the best lasagna in the entire city. We were sitting comfortably in a corner booth, just talking about nothing in particular. My terrible boss at the insurance company, his various frustrations with a large construction project that was currently running seriously over budget, when his cell phone suddenly rang. He glanced quickly at the screen, and his expression immediately darkened. "I really need to take this. I'm so sorry." He quickly stepped away from the table and walked toward the front of the restaurant, and I could easily see him through the window, his posture immediately tense, his free hand gesturing sharply as he spoke rapidly into the phone. Something was definitely wrong. When he finally came back to the table, his face was carefully blank, giving absolutely nothing away. "We need to go now." "What is it?" "I'll explain in the car, Sarah. Please just come on." The drive was quiet, the silence thick with tension. Dominic made several phone calls, his voice tight and controlled as he barked orders in rapid-fire Italian, which I couldn't understand. We definitely weren't heading back to my apartment. Instead, we pulled up in front of a building I'd never seen before. A completely unremarkable residential tower, nestled in a quiet, almost suburban-feeling neighborhood. "Where are we?" I asked as he came around to help me out of the car. "Somewhere safe, that's all you need to know for now." "Come on," he said, ushering me forward. The apartment we entered was on the top floor, spacious, modern, and sleek, but it was obvious that no one actually lived there full-time. It felt like a place that was kept ready and waiting, strictly for emergencies. "Dominic, you're scaring me. What in the world is going on?" He poured himself a stiff drink from the well-stocked bar, tossed it back in one gulp, and then finally turned to face me. "Martinelli made a move tonight. He hit one of my businesses, a warehouse out in Red Hook. Luckily, no one was hurt, but it's a clear message. He's escalating things because of you, because he thinks I'm distracted, because he thinks you're a weak spot that he can exploit." Dominic set the empty glass down on the bar harder than he needed to. "He's wrong if he thinks that's going to work. What does this mean for us? For our arrangement?" He crossed the room in a couple of strides to stand directly in front of me. And for the first time since I'd met him, I could see a flicker of genuine uncertainty in his eyes. "It means I've been lying to myself about this whole thing. This was supposed to be simple protection, a straightforward business transaction. But somewhere along the way it stopped being fake for me." My heart skipped a beat. "What?" "I care about you, Sarah. I really care about you. It's not because of some obligation or this arrangement we have, but because you're smart and brave and you make me laugh and you actually look at me like I'm a person, not just a position. And that terrifies me because it makes Martinelli right. You are a weak point. You're the first real weakness I've had in a decade. I just stared at him, trying to wrap my head around everything he was saying. Dominic, I'm not asking you to feel the same way. He rushed on, as if needing to get the words out. I know this whole thing started as something you were forced into, but I need you to know that whatever happens next, whatever I have to do to end this thing with Martinelli, it's not about protecting an asset or maintaining appearances. It's about keeping safe someone He trailed off, seeming to struggle with the right words. Someone who's become important to me. You're really bad at this, I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. At what? At pretending you don't have feelings. I took a step closer to him, closing the physical distance between us. For the record, I stopped pretending about 2 weeks ago, maybe sooner. I've just been terrified that I was alone in this, that I was being a complete idiot for catching feelings during a fake relationship. His hands came up to cup my face, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch in my throat. You're not alone, Sarah. You've never been alone in this. When he kissed me, it wasn't for show or for appearances or because anyone was watching. It was real and raw and desperate, like he'd been holding himself back for weeks and finally couldn't anymore. I kissed him back with equal passion, my hands bunching up in the fabric of his jacket, pulling him closer. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I'm going to fix this, he said, his voice rough. I'm going to end the threat from Martinelli, and then you're going to have a choice to make. What choice? Whether this becomes real, officially, whether you want to actually try this with me, knowing what my life is, what I am, or whether you walk away and I let you go back to your normal life. The next 72 hours were a complete blur. Dominic kept me tucked away in the safe apartment, protected by a rotating crew of his most trusted men. He came and went, always looking more tired, more worn down, but he never failed to check on me, never stopped making sure I had everything I needed. Through his brief, hurried updates, I pieced together what was happening behind the scenes. He was meeting with neutral families, calling in old favors, building a coalition to pressure Martinelli into backing down. It was incredibly delicate work, requiring a ton of finesse and leverage, and the kind of complex political maneuvering that I couldn't quite wrap my head around. On the 4th day, he came back to the apartment looking completely exhausted, but also satisfied. It's done, he announced, collapsing onto the couch beside me. Martinelli has agreed to a truce. He backs off, leaves you and my interests alone, and in exchange I don't move on his waterfront operations. It's a mutual non-aggression pact, enforced by the Council of Families. The Council of Families, I knew, were the heads of all the major organized crime organizations in the city. They served as mediators, stepping in when conflicts threatened to spiral out of control. Martinelli didn't want this to escalate any more than I did, Dominic explained. He was testing me, seeing how far I'd go, and I proved that I was willing to burn everything to the ground to protect what's mine. That was enough to make him back down. So, it's really over? I asked, hardly daring to believe it. The immediate threat is over. There will always be tensions, always be competition. That's just the nature of this world. But you're safe now. Officially, publicly, untouchably safe. He reached for my hand, threading his fingers through mine, which means you have that choice I promised you. My heart was pounding in my chest. The choice about whether this becomes real. Yes, he said quietly. I told you 2 months, and we're almost there. The arrangement is fulfilled. You can walk away with your payment, your safety guaranteed, and go back to your life. I'll keep people watching over you from a distance, but you'll be free of me. Free of all of this. He paused, his thumb gently tracing circles on the back of my hand. Or you can stay. Really stay, not as part of an arrangement, but as my actual girlfriend, with all the complications and dangers and strangeness that entails. You make it sound so appealing, I said with a shaky laugh. I'm just trying to be honest with you, Sarah. Being with me isn't easy. There will always be security concerns. There will always be parts of my business that you can't know about. There will be people who judge you for being with someone like me. Your life will never be completely normal again. And what do I get in return for accepting all that? He looked at me with those dark eyes that had become so familiar, so dear to me over these past weeks. You get me, all of me, my loyalty, my protection, my time, my attention. You get someone who will move heaven and earth to keep you safe and happy. You get someone who sees you, really sees you, and thinks you're extraordinary. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. You get someone who's falling in love with you, and is absolutely terrified that he's going to mess it up. Tears started to prick at my eyes. You're falling in love with me? Have been for weeks, he admitted. I just didn't want to admit it, even to myself, because it felt like too much pressure, too much to put on you when you didn't ask for any of this. He brought my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles gently. But I'm done pretending, done lying to myself. I love you, Sarah Mitchell. And if you'll have me, if you'll take a chance on this impossible thing between us, I promise I'll spend every single day trying to be worthy of that choice. I thought about my old life, the boring office job and the predictable routine, and the supposed safety of knowing exactly what each day would bring. I thought about what Jenna had said, about how I seemed to light up whenever Dominic was around. I thought about the past month, the constant fear and the undeniable excitement, and the way my heart would race every time he walked into a room. I must be crazy, I said, wiping at my eyes. Absolutely insane. His face fell, his expression clouding over with worry. You want to leave? No, you idiot, I said, shaking my head. I'm crazy because I'm staying, because I love you too, and I have absolutely no idea how this is going to work, but I want to try. I cupped his face in my hands, forcing him to look directly at me. I choose you, Dominic Russo. I choose this. All of it. The smile that broke across his face was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. He kissed me again, deeper this time, full of promise and a profound sense of relief and pure joy. When we finally broke apart, he pulled me against his chest, holding me so tight it almost hurt, like he'd never let go. You won't regret this, he murmured into my hair. I swear to you, Sarah, I'll make absolutely sure you never regret this. I know, I said, and surprisingly I actually meant it. 6 months later, I stood in Dominic's restaurant, or, as he now insisted on calling it, our restaurant, surrounded by friends and family, celebrating my birthday. Jenna was there, still slightly intimidated by Dominic, but slowly warming up to him. My parents had even flown in, surprisingly accepting of my relationship once they'd actually met Dominic and seen for themselves how well he treated me. Even Maria had become a friend, helping me navigate some of the more complicated aspects of Dominic's world. Dominic himself was right there at my side, his arm wrapped firmly around my waist, laughing at something my father had just said. He'd kept every single promise he'd made to me. The security was always discreet, but ever-present. The complications in our lives were definitely real, but completely manageable. And his love, his unwavering attention, his absolute devotion, that was as constant and essential as breathing. I'd quit my job at the insurance company and started working with some of Dominic's legitimate businesses, using my risk assessment skills to help streamline their operations. It definitely wasn't the life I'd ever planned for myself, but it was a life I'd actively chosen, and that made all the difference in the world. Happy? Dominic asked, pulling me aside for a moment as the party continued to swirl around us. Incredibly, I said, and leaned in to kiss him. Good, because I have one more present for you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart practically stopped beating. Dominic, it's not what you think it is. Not yet anyway, he said with a wink. He opened the box to reveal not a ring, but a key. It's to my place. I want you to move in with me, officially. No more splitting time between apartments. No more pretending that we need separate spaces. I want to wake up with you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I took the key, feeling the weight of it in my palm. Another choice. Another step deeper into the strange and wonderful life we were building together. Yes, I said simply. Absolutely yes. He kissed me again, even harder this time, and somewhere in the background, I distinctly heard Jenna Wolfe let out a celebratory whistle, and my mother make a happy little sound. This strange, impossible, wonderful life. It was mine now. I claimed it, chosen it, fought for it. And it all started with one mortifying text sent to the wrong number. So there you have it. My completely insane, absolutely true story of how I accidentally texted a mafia boss and ended up finding love in the most unexpected place. If you enjoyed this wild ride, I'd be so incredibly grateful if you could give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me what you honestly would have done if 5 black SUVs had shown up at your house. Would you have gotten in the car, or would you have just run as fast as you could in the opposite direction? I'm genuinely curious to know. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.